In 2021, FC Barcelona were finished. 1.3 billion euros in debt, their greatest player ever, Lionel Messi, gone, and humiliated 8-2 by Bayern Munich. This wasn't a downfall, this was the end, or at least that's what the world thought. Welcome to Offside Hour, and today we will break down how Barca rebuilt after their darkest era. Let's be real, 1.3 billion euros in debt. That's not just bad, that's a disaster. And a lot of this came from the previous president, Josep Maria Bartomeu, one of most decorated club in the history of Spanish football, winners of 5 Champions Leagues, the club that gave the world Cruyff, Ronaldinho, Xavi, Iniesta, and the greatest player who ever lived. 2 bad transfers, huge wages, no long-term plan. Barcelona were spending money they didn't have, and then it hit the breaking point. And it wasn't just the money was almost secondary. What hurt Barca more was what happened on the pitch, an 8-2 defeat to Bayern Munich. Not a loss, not a bad night, what? An annihilation broadcast to hundreds of millions of people around the world, the kind of result that doesn't just end a season, it ends an era. Barcelona's wage bill had grown so far beyond control that it exceeded the club's total revenue. They could not register new players, they were operating in a financial straitjacket of their own making. And then came the moment that made it all undeniable. Lionel Messi, the man who was Barcelona, the man who had spent 21 years defining what that club meant, had to leave. Not because he wanted to, but because the club literally couldn't afford him. And that's before things got even worse, because after that they dropped into the Europa League and got knocked out by Manchester United. This wasn't just decline anymore, this was humiliation. No identity, no direction, no future. This was not a club going through a difficult phase, this was a full collapse. That's when Joan Laporta steps in. Joan Laporta had done it before. In 2003, he inherited a Barcelona that was drifting, directionless, and broke. He brought in Ronaldinho. He hired Frank Rijkaard. He turned a club on the edge into a European powerhouse. Now in 2021, he was being asked to do it again, except this time the hole was deeper, the walls were higher, and the margin for error was essentially zero. And instead of playing it safe, he gambles big. He sells 25% of the club's TV rights, sells parts of Barca Studios, raises over 700 million euros, then brings in major sponsorships, like Spotify. Critics were furious, analysts called it reckless, opposition fans called it desperate. But Laporta understood something simple: Barcelona cannot afford to be irrelevant. So, they spent Robert Lewandowski, Rafinha, Jules, Koundé, Lewandowski, the most reliable striker in Europe for the better part of a decade, Jules Koundé, to rebuild a defense that had been leaking goals for years, Rafinha for pace and creativity and the kind of direct running that Barcelona had been missing. At the same time, the old era ends. Gerard Piqué retires, Sergio Busquets leaves, the core that defined a generation, gone. Something else had to grow, La Masia. While the football world was focused on transfer fees and television rights deals, something had been growing in the background for years, something that didn't cost 700 million euros, something that didn't require a press conference or a medical. It came from a building a few miles outside the city, a place that had produced players like Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, Puyol, Messi, Pedri, and in 2024, it produced something that even its most devoted believers hadn't quite expected: Lamine Yamal Pau Cubarsí, and especially Fermín López. This guy is everywhere. Late runs, goals, energy. Honestly, he's becoming one of the most important players in the team, maybe even the key to how this system works. And then there's Yamal, 17 years old, already being compared to Messi and Neymar, at an age when most footballers are still in youth football, still figuring out their position, still deciding whether this is the path they want. Yamal was starting for FC Barcelona in La Liga. He took on defenders with no hesitation. He demanded the ball in the tightest spaces. He is the most dangerous wide player in Spanish football. He has scored from 30 yards. He has dribbled past international defenders like they weren't there. Then there was Pau Cubarsí, a central defender, 19 years old, playing in a high defensive line in a team that holds the offside trap as an article of faith. Fermín López, players nobody was discussing in mainstream football 2 years ago, now integral parts of a team leading Europe in goals and possession. Pedri, the player who was supposed to be the future 5 years ago, who was derailed by injury after injury, who many had quietly written off, now playing nearly every minute of every match, healthy, present, setting the tempo for one of the best teams in Europe. These are not borrowed players. These are not players on contracts that will eventually become too expensive. These are Barcelona's own. Now, before all of this dominance, there was one important phase. Xavi Hernandez, Laporta brought him back to rebuild the identity, and to be fair, he delivered. Won La Liga, won the Supercopa, stabilized the club. He gave Barcelona structure again. He was the one who trusted Yamal. But here's where things got messy. Laporta publicly backed him, even convinced him to stay, and then sacked him. Fans were confused, angry. It felt chaotic, like the club still didn't fully know what it was doing. Then in 2024, Hansi Flick arrives, and everything changes. This is the same guy who destroyed Barcelona 8-2 with Bayern. Now he's leading them, and he completely shifts their identity. No more slow tiki-taka. Now it's fast, direct, aggressive. Formation changes too, from 4-3-3 to 4-2-1-3, with a cam, Dani Olmo, Fermin Gavi, rotating that role. And from the first week, everything shifted. Training sessions became shorter and infinitely more intense. Every drill had a clear purpose. Every movement pattern was deliberate. There was no wasted time, no comfortable repetition. Players who had spent years in routine suddenly found themselves in a completely different environment. The centerpiece of Flick's system is the press, not a general vague idea about pressing, a specific triggered coordinated press that activates the entire team in the same instant, like a switch being flipped. The midfielders collapse onto every passing lane simultaneously. The defensive line steps up, holding its shape, setting the offside trap. The opposition have no time, no space, no options. By late 2024, Barcelona were winning the offside trap nearly 7 times per game, 7 times. The next closest team in La Liga wasn't even in the same conversation. And one player who explodes under Flick, Rafinha. 57 games, 34 goals, 22 assists, Champions League, top scorer, top creator, different level. In the 2024-25 season, FC Barcelona scored 174 goals across all competitions. Domestic treble, top of La Liga again. This isn't recovery anymore, this is dominance. Lewandowski scored 42 goals, Rafinha contributed 22 goal involvements. Yamal, at 17 years old, had 21 across the campaign. And while all this is happening, Barcelona are rebuilding Camp Nou. 1.45 billion euro project, more revenue, bigger future, but also more pressure because the financial gamble is still there. This is the new era of FC Barcelona, not built on one generational talent, not dependent on a single transfer window, built on a system, Flick's intensity, Laporta's audacity, and La Masia's legacy that has taken a club from complete collapse to the summit of European football in less than 5 years. And then 2025-26 began, and they didn't slow down. By March 2026, Barcelona sit first in La Liga again. Their goal difference is extraordinary. Their possession numbers have climbed even higher. In the Champions League, they have moved through the knockout stages with the kind of authority that makes opponents look at the draw and quietly hope they end up in the other half. Opponents do not look at Barcelona the way they did in 2022 or 2023. They do not see a vulnerable team, a team in transition, a team that can be outrun or outworked. So think about that. 1.3 billion euros debt, losing Messi, Europa League embarrassment, 2, the most exciting team in Europe, a new generation, a new identity, and leading it all. This isn't just a comeback, this is a complete transformation. So the real question is, can this Barcelona team dominate for the next decade?
At 17, is Lamine Yamal better than Cristiano Ronaldo?
Lamine Yamal is better than Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi at 17-year-old.